Let them see. I'm not scared, she declared. That's when the solitary rancher took action. The wind swept across the dry, dusty plains of Nuvira, carrying tiny particles of red-brown soil that clung to everything. From the distant ridge, Mara watched the horizon, her eyes sharp against the blinding light of the twin suns. The ranch lay spread behind her, simple and sturdy. Low buildings of metal and clay, fenced pens for the animals, and the occasional water tower that marked human settlement on this otherwise empty planet. It was a lonely life. The nearest neighbor lived hours away by hover trail, and most of the other settlers kept to themselves. Humans had come here because the planet was cheap, open, and full of land. But isolation was the price they paid. Mara had grown up with the wide skies and empty plains as her playground. Most of the time it was quiet and peaceful. Today, however, there was something different in the air. High above, the sky rippled strangely. Not clouds, not storms, but a shimmer that moved with purpose. Mara squinted. The shimmer solidified into a shape, an alien craft, round, smooth, and hovering silently above the ridge. Its surface reflected the sunlight in a way that made it almost invisible against the sky. She had heard stories of such things, ships from beyond human space, but she had never seen one so close. The village behind her was already in motion. Windows shuttered, doors locked, and people scurrying to hide. Fear had a familiar sound, frantic footsteps, whispered prayers, and the occasional startled cry. Mara, however, did not move. She planted her boots firmly on the ground, lifted her chin, and let her gaze meet the hovering craft. "Let them see," she said aloud, her voice carrying in the thin wind. "I'm not scared." Her words startled even her. She had never spoken to one of the mysterious visitors before, but somehow, standing there, she felt stronger than she ever had. She felt the weight of her ancestors in her chest, the countless humans who had faced dangers in the wilderness, in the seas, and even on other planets. Courage, she realized, was a choice. From the ridge, Mara's father, Garrick, watched. He had been standing behind the farmhouse, watching the sky. He was a solitary man, known among the few neighbors for his skill with animals, his stubborn independence, and the quiet intelligence that made him someone people respected but rarely bothered. Garrick had always taught Mara that humans had something unique, the ability to face danger with calm, the ability to think, to adapt, and to endure. And now, he thought, his daughter was showing it. The alien craft hovered lower, its smooth surface catching sunlight like a living mirror. It did not make a sound, but Mara could feel its presence, an almost tangible pressure, like a breeze that wasn't really wind. She didn't flinch. Instead, she walked slowly down the ridge toward the village, her boots crunching on the dry soil. The villagers turned to watch, some whispering her name, some shaking their heads in disbelief. "You're crazy, Mara," one old woman called, though her voice trembled more with fear than anger. Mara didn't answer. She kept walking, letting the wind push her hair back from her face. The craft seemed to follow her, adjusting its position in the sky. Every time she looked up, the shimmer was there, reflecting the suns and the plains in a way that made it almost impossible to see its true shape. Her father came down to meet her, his long coat flapping in the wind. "Mara," he said quietly, "you shouldn't." "I'm not hiding," she interrupted, stopping in front of him. "Why should I? They're just watching. They're not hurting anyone. Let them see us for what we are." Garrick studied her. He had always admired her courage, but part of him worried. These visitors were unknown. Humans had never met them up close before. What if they misunderstood? What if fear, panic, or a mistake led to trouble? But then he remembered, Mara was right. Humans were different. Even when faced with uncertainty, they had a way of standing tall, of meeting danger with curiosity instead of running. Maybe the visitors would understand that too. "Very well," he said finally, with a hint of a smile. "Then we show them." Together they walked toward the pens, Mara's hands brushing against the fences of the animals. The livestock used to her presence barely flinched. They were calm, as if sensing her steady energy. The villagers watched from the safety of their homes, peeking through shutters and cracked doors. The alien craft tilted slightly, and Mara noticed something she hadn't seen before: faint patterns of light on its surface. They weren't weapons. They weren't signals humans could understand easily. They seemed curious, observing, learning. "Do you see that?" Mara whispered to her father. Garrick nodded. "Yes, they're studying us, but not like enemies, more like they want to understand." The wind picked up, carrying the scent of dry grass and warm soil. Mara took a deep breath, enjoying the simplicity of it all. She didn't feel fear. She felt alive. "Why do you think they came here?" she asked. "No one knows," Garrick replied. "Some think they follow the path of new colonies. Others think they study humans specifically, but it doesn't matter. What matters is how we respond." Mara smiled. "Then we respond by being human." The craft hovered lower still, now only a few hundred feet above the village. Mara could make out faint, geometric shapes on its hull, shapes that moved, patterns that shifted. It was like watching a living puzzle, and yet it made no aggressive moves. The villagers began to stir, curiosity battling with fear. One by one, small groups came out to watch Mara and her father. Whispered conversations passed among them. "Why isn't she afraid? What is she thinking? Maybe humans aren't as weak as they believed." Garrick noticed it too. The fear that had ruled the village for weeks, the fear of the unknown, of the aliens, of what humans couldn't control, was fading. All because of one girl's courage. Suddenly, the craft emitted a soft hum. The sound wasn't loud, but it vibrated through the soil and air, a resonance that seemed almost like a greeting. Mara raised her hand, instinctively waving. She had no idea if they understood gestures, but it felt right. To her surprise, the craft's surface shimmered in response. Patterns of light rippled across its body, slower this time, almost like acknowledgement. Mara's heart raced with excitement. The visitors were communicating. In their own way, they were responding to her bravery. "See," she said to Garrick. "They see us. They see me." Garrick felt pride swell in his chest. "And they will remember," he said softly. "Humans are not timid. We face the unknown. We endure. We adapt." The twin suns began their slow descent, casting long shadows across the plains. The alien craft lingered, still observing. Mara didn't look away. She didn't flinch. For the first time, the humans of the village felt a sense of unity, a feeling that perhaps they were not as fragile as they had thought. Hours passed, though it felt like moments. The wind carried the low hum of the craft, the smell of dry grass, and the soft murmur of villagers who had come outside to witness the event. Mara stood tall, her hands on her hips, her eyes fixed on the sky. And then Garrick knew it was time. The challenge had been set and the response was clear. Mara had shown that humans could face fear with calm, that courage was more powerful than panic. Whatever the aliens were, they had seen something remarkable. He put a hand on her shoulder. "You've done well, Mara." "Very well, but now we must prepare. They may test us further." Mara nodded, her eyes never leaving the hovering craft. "Let them test," she said. "I'm ready." The sun dipped below the horizon, and the desert plains glowed with the last light of the day. The alien craft hovered silently, its patterns of light dancing across its smooth hull. And somewhere in that silent dance, Mara felt the first true spark of connection between humans and the unknown. She was not scared. And she never would be. The morning sun rose slowly over the red plains of Nuvira, painting the ranch and village in warm gold. The twin suns reflected off the hills in the distance, making the landscape appear almost alive. Mara was already awake, sitting on the ridge where she had first seen the alien craft the day before. Her father, Garrick, was not far behind, carrying a small satchel of supplies. The village was quiet, though not from fear. Villagers peeked from behind fences and doors, whispering among themselves. They had stayed awake most of the night, unable to sleep after witnessing Mara's fearless stand. Something had shifted. Their fear had not vanished entirely, but it had become curiosity, tempered by awe. Mara's eyes were fixed on the horizon. The craft had returned just before dawn, hovering silently above the plains, no closer than the day before but clearly observing. Mara could feel it in the air. Its attention seemed deliberate, thoughtful. "They're still here," she said softly. Garrick nodded. "Yes, they're studying but not aggressively. That is interesting." He lowered himself onto a boulder beside her, running his fingers over the rough stone. Most humans would have hidden, locked themselves indoors. "You didn't, you stood your ground. That has changed how they perceive us." Mara tilted her head. "Do you think they can understand bravery?" Garrick smiled faintly. "Perhaps not as we do, but intelligence is universal. They must recognize that we are different, that we are willing to act despite fear." The hum of the craft vibrated faintly through the air, a low, rhythmic tone that seemed almost musical. Mara closed her eyes, letting it wash over her. She had no idea if the sound meant anything, but she felt connected, as though a silent conversation had begun. After a few moments, she opened her eyes. "I think they're trying to learn," she said. "Not just about humans, about this place. About us." Garrick's expression turned serious. Observation is only the first step. Learning comes next. And sometimes when an unknown species is curious, it can become unpredictable. We need to be ready. Mara nodded. She did not fear, but she understood her father's caution. Humans had survived because they were careful, because they watched, listened, and adapted. And now, facing the unknown, those qualities would matter more than ever. The day began slowly. Garrick instructed Mara to check on the animals, repair fences, and ensure that everything in the ranch was orderly. The tasks were ordinary, yet Mara performed them with a heightened awareness. Every movement, every sound, every shadow was noted. The alien craft remained overhead, hovering silently, shifting slightly as if it followed her from above. Other villagers started to venture out. At first, timidly, then with more confidence. Some came to watch Mara, some simply to see the strange craft. Whispers ran through the crowd. "She isn't afraid. How can someone be so calm? Maybe humans aren't as weak as we thought." Garrick observed them quietly, noting the change. Humanity's strength was not in numbers or weapons. It was in courage, adaptability, and ingenuity. And now, in this small village on the edge of the galaxy, Mara was showing them that in a way no one else could. By midday, the craft moved slightly closer, its reflective surface catching sunlight in dazzling patterns. The geometric lights on its hull shifted, pulsing in a way that felt intentional. Mara watched, fascinated. She tried to mirror the patterns with her hand gestures, waving slowly, tilting her head, moving from one spot to another. To her surprise, the lights seemed to respond. The shimmer spread across the hull, slowly matching her gestures. Mara's heart raced. They were not just observing, they were reacting. "Do you see that?" she asked Garrick, pointing. "I see it," he said quietly. "This is communication of a sort. Not words, not sound, but patterns. They are learning from you, learning about humans." A small crowd of villagers had gathered, some bold enough to step closer. Mara's courage seemed contagious. Even the fearful began to hold themselves differently, watching the skies with curiosity instead of panic. As the hours passed, Garrick and Mara worked together to study the craft. They noticed subtle patterns in the lights, shifts that occurred when they moved, when animals reacted, even when the wind changed. They began to theorize. Perhaps the aliens were recording data, mapping human behavior, or studying natural responses. Mara laughed softly. "They're like scientists," she said. "Curious, careful, but not cruel." Garrick nodded. "Yes, and like all intelligent beings, they respond to observation. We are giving them information, information about humans." The wind shifted suddenly, bringing the scent of water from the distant river. The aliens responded almost instantly, tilting slightly, as if acknowledging the change. Mara noticed the subtle grace in the way they moved, how each adjustment was deliberate. "They're precise," she said. "Everything they do has purpose." Garrick smiled. "Humans too, Mara, that is our strength. Purpose guided by thought, courage guided by knowledge. That is why we endure." By late afternoon, the craft hovered above the plains, its light patterns becoming more intricate. Mara sat on the ridge, sketching the shapes in her notebook. She had learned to record not just what she saw, but how it shifted in response to human movement. Garrick watched her quietly, a sense of pride swelling in his chest. "Do you think they understand us?" Mara asked. "Perhaps in part," Garrick replied. "But understanding is a process. Observation is the first step. Communication comes next. And the most important part is trust. If we show calm, curiosity, and courage, they will learn that humans are unique in ways even they might respect." The villagers had mostly retreated by late afternoon, but a few lingered, observing Mara from a distance. They were learning from her example, realizing that fear did not have to control them. Humanity's strength, they were beginning to see, was not in weapons or numbers, but in spirit, in thought, in courage. As the twin suns began to set, casting long shadows across the red plains, the alien craft finally shifted, moving slightly to the side. Mara stood, raising her hands in a simple gesture of greeting. The lights on the craft pulsed in rhythm with her movement, as if acknowledging her presence. Garrick felt a chill run down his spine, not from fear but from awe. This was the first real interaction, however subtle, between humans and a truly alien intelligence. Mara had faced it without hesitation, without fear, and the craft had responded. "Tomorrow," Garrick said, "we prepare to engage them more directly. Not with weapons, not with force, but with thought. Humans have a way of showing strength that is different." "We will demonstrate it," Mara nodded. "I'm ready, Father. They've seen courage today. Let's show them what else humans can do." Night fell over the village and ranch, but the plains were still alive with the soft hum of the alien craft. Mara lay on the ridge, gazing at the stars, thinking about what the future might hold. She knew the visitors were studying them, learning from them, and perhaps testing them in their own way. But she was not afraid. She had learned something important. Courage was more than bravery in a moment. It was calm, thought, observation, and understanding. Humans had that in abundance. And now, on this lonely world, Mara was determined to show it. The wind whispered across the plains, carrying the distant sound of water, the smell of soil, and the hum of the hovering craft. Mara felt connected, not just to her father, her animals, or the village, but to something far greater. The universe was vast, full of mysteries, but humans had something special. They could face the unknown. They could endure. They could inspire curiosity instead of fear. And tomorrow, she thought, they would show the visitors even more. The next morning, the twin suns rose over Nuvira with a gentle glow, painting the plains in shades of gold and red. The wind carried the familiar scent of dry soil, mixed with the faint aroma of the river that ran miles from the village. Mara had been awake for hours, perched on her favorite ridge, her notebook open in her lap. She sketched the movements of the alien craft, noting patterns in the lights and subtle shifts in its hover. Garrick joined her soon after, carrying a small box filled with simple instruments, mirrors, lenses, and sound devices he had spent the night assembling. He set them carefully on the ridge, arranging them with precision. "Today," he said quietly, "we do more than watch. Today we respond. Observation is one thing, but curiosity must be met with clarity. The aliens are learning. We will teach them something too about humans." Mara's eyes sparkled. "What do we show them?" Garrick smiled faintly. "Ingenuity, calm, creativity, and courage, of course. Watch, learn, and follow my lead." The villagers remained behind their homes, watching from a safe distance. Rumors of Mara's bravery had spread through the settlement overnight. Some were curious, others cautious, but all were drawn to the ridge, quietly observing. By mid-morning, the alien craft appeared again, hovering low over the plains, its geometric lights flickering in irregular patterns. Mara felt a familiar hum in the air, a vibration that seemed almost like a greeting. She waved gently as she had yesterday and the lights pulsed in response. But this time there was something different. Small drones detached from the craft, moving in slow arcs across the plains. They were smooth, metallic, and silent, their surfaces reflecting sunlight. Mara watched them approach the ranch. Most villagers would have panicked, but she remained calm, standing her ground as the drones hovered near the fences. "They're testing reactions," Garrick said quietly. "Not aggression, but curiosity. They want to see how we respond under pressure." Mara nodded, her heart steady. She took a few steps closer to the drones, observing them carefully. They didn't touch the animals or structures. Instead, they moved with careful precision, almost like painters examining a canvas. "Why do they do this?" she asked. "They learn through observation," Garrick replied. "Every action, every decision we make, it becomes information for them. They are gathering knowledge about humans, our instincts, our courage, our habits." Mara glanced at the animals in the pens. The livestock had grown used to the strange visitors. Cows and goats grazed calmly, barely noticing the drones. Even the dogs sat quietly, watching with alert but relaxed eyes. Mara realized then that the calm of humans and animals alike sent a message. Fear was not universal here. She turned to Garrick. "So they test, we respond. But how do we show them our human strength?" Garrick opened his box. "Ingenuity. Humans have survived by adapting, by creating, by understanding the world around them and using it in clever ways. Today, we show them that." Together, they began arranging the instruments. Mirrors angled to catch sunlight, lenses to focus it into sharp beams, and sound devices that could carry low hums and gentle vibrations across the plains. Mara adjusted the positions under her father's instructions, her hands steady, her mind focused. Every placement had meaning, every shift mattered. The drones moved closer, almost inspecting the setup. Mara held her breath. She could feel the hum of the craft through the soles of her boots, a resonance that seemed almost like a tension. "Now," Garrick said, "observe the response, then adapt. Humans are not static, we adjust, we think, we innovate." Mara nodded, recalling the countless lessons her father had taught her. How to survive alone on the plains, how to care for animals, how to read the wind, the sun, and the terrain. Today, those lessons were about more than survival. They were about communication. The drones paused, hovering above the mirrored setup. Light bounced off the mirrors, scattering across the plains in dazzling patterns. Sound waves carried gentle tones that rippled through the air, interacting with the hum of the craft. Mara moved carefully, adjusting mirrors and angles, creating new patterns with each shift. Slowly, the craft responded. Its geometric lights pulsed in rhythm with the reflections, almost mimicking the patterns Mara and her father had created. The drones rotated, hovered, and adjusted as if studying the changes, learning the logic behind each movement. "Look at that," Mara whispered. "They're responding to us." "Yes," Garrick said. "Humans are clever. That is what they recognize. We do not react with violence. We respond with thought, with creativity. That is our strength." For hours, Mara and Garrick continued their demonstration. The drones moved closer, exploring the patterns. Sometimes they would pause, their surfaces glowing brightly, as if to indicate interest. Other times they shifted suddenly, testing new angles. Mara's mind raced with possibilities. Every response from the craft was a puzzle, and every adjustment she made was an answer. The villagers watched from afar, fascination replacing fear. They whispered among themselves. "They are teaching them," one said, "showing them how humans think." By late afternoon, the twin suns cast long shadows across the plains. Mara and Garrick had created a network of light and sound that stretched across the ridge, patterns reflecting off mirrors and dancing across the earth. The craft hovered above, its lights flashing in response, its drones moving in synchronized arcs. Mara felt a thrill she had never experienced before. The visitors were not hostile, they were learning, they were curious, and she was part of something bigger than herself, a human demonstration of creativity, courage, and calm. "Do you think they understand now?" Mara asked. "Perhaps in part," Garrick replied. "Understanding takes time, but they recognize something about us they may not have expected. Humans are not simple. Humans are adaptable, courageous, and inventive. That is why we endure." The drones finally returned to the main craft, hovering gently as the sun dipped toward the horizon. Mara and Garrick stepped back, observing the response. The craft's lights pulsed slowly, rhythmically, almost like a silent applause. Mara laughed softly, a sound full of relief and wonder. "We did it. They're learning from us and we're learning from them." "Yes," Garrick said, "observation is a two-way street. Humans learn from the unknown, and sometimes the unknown learns from humans. That is how we grow. That is how we survive." As the light faded, the villagers began to emerge from their homes. They walked carefully toward the ridge, eyes wide with amazement. Mara smiled at them. "See, there is nothing to fear," she said. "They are learning, and so are we." A few villagers dared to approach the mirrors, touching the edges, watching how light reflected and changed. They experimented cautiously, moving objects, tilting surfaces. Mara guided them gently, showing how small adjustments could make big differences. Even the oldest among them seemed captivated by the possibilities, forgetting fear in the presence of curiosity. Garrick watched silently, pride in his eyes. Humanity had survived because it could face challenges with intelligence and courage. Mara's demonstration was a living example of that truth, and the aliens above were learning it too. Night fell, and the twin moons rose, casting silver light across the plains. The alien craft hovered silently above the ridge, its lights dimmed but still pulsing faintly. Mara sat beside her father, exhausted but exhilarated. "They'll remember this," Garrick said. "Our creativity, our courage, our calm, that is the message we send, and tomorrow perhaps they will test us again." Mara nodded. She had learned something vital. Humans were not just survivors. They were teachers, innovators, and thinkers. Every calm action, every clever adjustment, every display of courage told the story of a species capable of facing the unknown without fear. And as the stars appeared above, the twin moons reflecting light across the plains, Mara felt a quiet certainty. Whatever the visitors had planned next, humans would meet it with calm, thought, and ingenuity. That was their strength. That was what made them human. The wind whispered across the plains, carrying the scent of soil, water, and possibility. Mara gazed at the hovering craft, its silhouette dark against the moonlight, and smiled. They were watching. They were learning. And Mara knew that humans would continue to shine, no matter what the universe presented. The morning on Nuvira began quietly, almost peacefully, as if the planet itself held its breath. The twin suns rose slowly over the red plains, bathing the village in warm, golden light. Mara was already awake, perched on her favorite ridge with her notebook and a few instruments Garrick had prepared. Today, she could feel, would be different. Garrick appeared behind her, carrying several small boxes filled with more mirrors, lenses, and simple sound devices. "Today," he said, "we do not only respond, we engage. We show them humans are more than observers, they are thinkers, creators, and innovators." Mara's eyes widened. "Engage them?" she asked. "Yes," Garrick replied, "not with weapons or force, but with intelligence and creativity. The aliens above are watching. They are learning. Today, we will teach them something remarkable." The villagers watched from a distance, cautious but curious. Word had spread about Mara's courage and her father's ingenuity. Many were inspired, realizing that humans could face the unknown with thought instead of fear. By mid-morning, the alien craft appeared again, hovering silently over the plains. Its surface shimmered, reflecting sunlight in intricate patterns. Drones detached from the main ship, hovering low, observing the ridge where Mara and Garrick had begun arranging their instruments. Mara felt the familiar hum in the air, vibrating softly through the soil beneath her boots. She raised her hand in greeting, and the craft's lights pulsed in response. This time, however, it seemed more deliberate, more focused, as if the visitors were anticipating what humans would do next. Garrick set to work quickly. He placed mirrors at precise angles, aligning lenses to focus sunlight into small, concentrated beams. Simple sound devices were positioned to create patterns of hums and vibrations across the ridge. Mara adjusted the angles of the mirrors and lenses, her hands steady, her mind focused. The craft and its drones hovered closer, inspecting the setup. Mara realized that the visitors were not just watching, they were learning from every move. "They notice everything," she whispered. "Every shift, every adjustment." "Yes," Garrick said, "and they will respond. Watch carefully. Humans have a gift. They do not react blindly. We think, we innovate, and we adapt. That is what sets us apart." The drones began moving in response, adjusting their positions as the mirrors reflected sunlight in different patterns. The lights on the main craft pulsed in rhythm with the reflections. Mara smiled. This was no longer a simple observation. It was a silent dialogue between humans and the unknown. "Let's take it further," Garrick said. He pulled a small, reflective disc from one of the boxes and positioned it to create a focused beam of light across the plains. He adjusted the sound device to emit a gentle, rhythmic hum that matched the pulsing of the craft's lights. Mara tilted her head, watching closely. The drones hovered over the pattern, their movements precise, almost curious. The craft above shifted slightly, its light patterns responding to the humans' arrangement below. "Do you see it?" Mara asked, excitement in her voice. "They're responding to the changes we make. It's like a conversation without words." Garrick nodded. "Exactly. Humans have always communicated beyond words, through action, through creation, through understanding. That is what they recognize today." Hours passed, but the ridge never grew boring. Mara and Garrick experimented with new angles, creating shifting patterns of light that stretched across the plains. The sound devices emitted soft harmonies, interacting with the hum of the craft. The drones followed each change meticulously, adjusting their positions to mirror or respond to the human setup. The villagers, who had begun the day cautiously, now edged closer, drawn by fascination. They watched Mara and Garrick work, whispering among themselves. "She isn't afraid," one woman said, "and look at how clever they are." Even the oldest villagers, who had feared the unknown for decades, leaned forward captivated. They realized that humans did not only survive, they could shape their environment, influence it, and even communicate with beings far beyond their understanding. By late afternoon, Garrick had devised a more intricate demonstration. He arranged a circle of mirrors with lenses at the center, creating a web of light that reflected across the ridge in complex patterns. Small sound devices were placed strategically, producing layered hums that moved in rhythm with the craft's light pulses. Mara adjusted the mirrors, experimenting with angles to create changing reflections. She watched the drones move in response, their rotations synchronized with the shifts in light. It was mesmerizing, almost like a dance between humans and the aliens. "This is incredible," Mara whispered. "They're learning from our creativity." "Yes," Garrick said, "and they will remember. Humans do not need weapons to impress or communicate. Our strength lies in thought, in adaptation, in courage paired with creativity." The sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the plains. Mara and Garrick stepped back, observing the full effect of their arrangement. The light beams danced across the soil, reflected from mirror to mirror, while the sounds created a gentle rhythm that matched the pulsing lights of the craft above. The drones hovered, circling the display, while the main craft tilted slightly, its surface shimmering in response. Mara could see patterns in the lights that seemed almost deliberate, synchronized with the human setup. It was a recognition, a silent acknowledgement of their ingenuity. A hush fell over the ridge as villagers gathered closer, mesmerized by the interplay of light and sound. Mara smiled at them. "This is how humans respond to the unknown," she said. "Not with fear, but with thought, with creativity, and with courage. We adapt, we learn, and we teach." Garrick added quietly, "Every action tells a story. Every choice we make is a message. Today, we send a message they will not forget." The craft pulsed once more, brighter this time, almost like a wave of appreciation. Mara's heart swelled. They had achieved something remarkable, a true interaction between species, not through aggression but through intellect, creativity, and calm courage. "Tomorrow," Garrick said, "we will take it further. We will show them more of what humans can do, how we solve problems, how we create solutions. Today was only the beginning." Mara nodded, exhaustion mixed with exhilaration. She had never felt more alive, more connected to the universe around her. She realized then that humans had a rare gift, the ability to face the unknown not only with courage, but with ingenuity and grace. The twin moons rose over Nuviera, casting silver light across the plains. The craft hovered silently, its lights dimmed but still pulsing faintly. Mara and Garrick sat together on the ridge, watching the aliens above. "They're learning," Mara said softly. "Yes," Garrick replied, "and we are teaching them something remarkable. Not through fear or force, but through thought, creativity, and courage. That is humanity." The villagers, still gathered at the base of the ridge, began to understand. Humans could face the unknown, not with weapons or power, but with intelligence, adaptability, and courage. Mara had shown them that fear was not necessary. Thought and creativity were stronger. As the night deepened, Mara lay back on the ridge, looking up at the stars. She thought of the aliens above, silent observers, learning from every gesture, every reflection, every sound. She knew the next step would come soon, another challenge, another opportunity to demonstrate the qualities that made humans unique. But she was ready. Humans had survived the wilds of countless worlds because they adapted, because they learned, because they met the unknown with courage. And tomorrow, she thought, they would show the visitors even more. The wind whispered across the plains, carrying the scent of soil, water, and possibilities. Mara felt a quiet certainty. Humans could face the unknown. They could endure. They could shine. And the aliens above, she was certain, had noticed. The morning light spread across the plains of Nuviera like a warm, golden blanket. Mara awoke before the twin suns had fully risen, her eyes drawn instinctively to the horizon. The alien craft had not disappeared during the night. Instead, it hovered silently above the village, its smooth surface reflecting the pale sunlight, and faint pulses of light danced across its hull. Garrick joined her on the ridge, carrying a satchel of new instruments. "Today," he said quietly, "we complete the demonstration. They have observed us, they have tested us. Now we show them the full measure of what humans can do." Mara's heart raced with excitement. "The full measure?" she asked. "Yes," Garrick replied. "Not only courage, not only ingenuity, but cooperation, observation, and intelligence working together. Humans do not act alone. We adapt, we think, and we create as a community. Today, they will see that." The villagers were already stirring. Word had spread that Mara and Garrick would attempt their final demonstration. Most stayed at a cautious distance, curious but hesitant, while a few approached, inspired by the courage and creativity they had witnessed over the past days. By mid-morning, the alien craft began to move. Its lights pulsed rhythmically, and several drones detached, hovering in formation above the plains. Mara could feel the familiar hum in the air, vibrating softly through the soil. It was as if the craft itself was aware of the villagers' presence, assessing their readiness. "Father," Mara said, "they're watching all of us, not just us two." "Yes," Garrick replied, "humans are stronger together. That is what we show today. Courage and intelligence alone matter, but unity shows the full potential of humanity." Garrick and Mara began arranging their instruments in a more intricate pattern than before. Mirrors were angled to catch sunlight and reflect it across multiple surfaces. Lenses focused the beams into precise points that could be shifted with slight adjustments. Small sound devices produced harmonic tones that interwove with the hum of the craft above. The villagers watched closely, some stepping forward cautiously to help. Even small children mimicked Mara's gestures, carefully adjusting mirrors or moving objects under Garrick's guidance. Mara smiled. Humans learned quickly when inspired. The drones hovered over the display, observing every adjustment. The main craft above pulsed its lights in response to changes, shifting in rhythm as if reading the humans' intentions. Mara and Garrick coordinated their movements with the villagers, creating a living pattern of light, reflection, and sound across the plains. Hours passed, and the display grew more complex. Sunlight bounced across mirrors, beams intersecting in patterns that seemed almost like symbols. The sounds layered together, creating a gentle harmony that resonated through the ridge and plains. The craft and its drones moved in sync with the humans' actions, its light pulses now almost musical. Mara felt a thrill unlike any she had ever experienced. This was more than observation. This was interaction. Humans were no longer passive. They were participants in a conversation with a species from beyond the stars. And they were doing so without fear, without aggression, but with intelligence, creativity, and unity. One of the older villagers whispered to Garrick, "It's beautiful like a dance." Garrick nodded. "Yes, humans are capable of remarkable things, not because of strength or numbers, but because of thought, cooperation, and courage. Today they see it, and they will remember it." As the twin suns dipped toward the horizon, Mara and Garrick made the final adjustments. A network of mirrors now stretched across the ridge, reflecting light in precise, shifting patterns. The sound devices produced a gentle, layered hum that moved in harmony with the craft's light pulses. The craft itself responded more vividly than ever. Its surface shimmered and shifted, forming intricate geometric patterns that mirrored the human's design. The drones moved in perfect synchronization, hovering and rotating in rhythm with the display. Mara could feel the resonance in her chest, a vibration that was almost like applause. "Look," she whispered to Garrick. "They're acknowledging us." "Yes," Garrick said softly. "They recognize what humans can do. They see not just individuals, but unity, creativity, intelligence, and courage combined. This is humanity at its best." The villagers had moved closer, drawn by fascination and awe. Even the most cautious among them watched silently, mesmerized by the interaction unfolding above. Mara stepped forward, raising her hands to the sky in a gesture of greeting. The craft's lights pulsed in a way that matched her movement, as if responding directly to her. For a long moment, the ridge was silent except for the gentle hum and the occasional whisper of wind. Then the craft tilted slightly, its surface shimmering in brilliant colors. The drones circled slowly, forming a pattern that mirrored the humans' arrangement. Mara understood instantly. It was a gesture of respect, recognition, and perhaps even admiration. Tears welled in her eyes. All the effort, the courage, the careful observation, and ingenuity had culminated in this moment. Humans had shown that they were not timid, not weak, but capable of remarkable intelligence, creativity, and courage. The aliens had seen it, and in their way acknowledged it. Garrick placed a hand on Mara's shoulder. "This is what I wanted you to see," he said softly. "Humans are special not because of strength, but because of the choices we make. Courage, thought, unity, ingenuity, that is what defines us." Mara nodded, her heart swelling with pride. She looked around at the villagers, who were now smiling, whispering to each other and even laughing softly. Fear had vanished, replaced with awe and inspiration. Humanity's strength was not just in the individual, but in the collective spirit. The twin moons rose, casting silver light across the plains. The craft hovered silently above the ridge, its lights dimmed but still pulsing faintly. Mara and Garrick stepped back, observing the interaction one last time. "They will remember this," Mara said. "Yes," Garrick replied, "and so will we. This is the beginning of understanding between species. They have learned about humanity, and we have learned about courage, ingenuity, and the power of unity." The villagers, inspired by the demonstration, began to experiment on their own. Small groups adjusted mirrors, tilted lenses, and played with sound devices. Mara guided them gently, showing how small adjustments could create complex patterns. Even the youngest children were engaged, learning that humans could communicate in ways beyond words. The craft remained for hours, silently observing, its drones moving gracefully. Then, as the twin moons reached their zenith, it tilted slightly, pulsing in a final sequence of lights. The drones returned to the main craft, and slowly the ship ascended higher into the sky. It hovered for a moment as if taking one last look before finally moving beyond the horizon, disappearing into the vastness of space. Mara exhaled deeply, relief and joy washing over her. "They're gone," she said softly. "Yes," Garrick replied, "but they will remember. Humans are not just survivors. We are thinkers, creators, and courageous beings. That is what makes us remarkable." The villagers gathered around Mara and Garrick, their faces alight with wonder. They had witnessed something extraordinary, a peaceful interaction with an alien intelligence, one that had respected humans because of courage, creativity, and ingenuity. One of the older villagers stepped forward. "I never thought I would see the day," he said. "Humans standing tall, unafraid, and showing what we can do. Mara, you and your father have shown us something incredible." Mara smiled. "We did it together," she said. "We all did. Humans have a way of facing the unknown, not with fear, but with thought, courage, and unity. That is what makes us special." Garrick placed a hand on her shoulder. "And that, Mara, is the lesson they will carry with them. Humanity is not just one person, one action, or one idea. It is the combination of all of us, working together, thinking, creating, and facing challenges with courage." The night deepened and the village fell quiet. The plains were peaceful, the wind gentle, carrying the scent of soil, grass, and distant water. Mara lay on the ridge, looking up at the stars, reflecting on what had happened. Humans had shown something extraordinary today, not just to aliens but to themselves. Courage had been important, yes. Ingenuity had been essential, but the most powerful lesson had been unity. When humans worked together, when they combined thought, creativity, and bravery, they were capable of remarkable things. And somewhere far beyond the horizon, Mara was certain, the visitors had seen it too. The twin moons cast silver light across the plains, and Mara felt a sense of calm and certainty. Humanity had endured countless challenges across countless worlds. And now they had demonstrated to another species that they were not merely survivors. They were thinkers, creators, and beings capable of courage, ingenuity, and unity. "They saw us," Mara whispered to Garrick, "and they understand now." "Yes," he replied softly. "They saw humans at their best, and that is something no one can take away." The wind whispered across the plains, carrying the quiet hum of life and the faint memory of light and sound. Mara smiled, closing her notebook, knowing that this day would be remembered. Not as a moment of fear, but as a moment of human triumph. Calm, courageous, creative, and united. And as the stars shone above, Mara felt certain that humanity would continue to shine, no matter where the universe led them.